You're listening to the Life Friendly Business Podcast. I'm your host, Erin Thomas Wong, business mentor, author, and founder of the Cocoon VIP membership, empowering women around the world to build businesses on their terms. If you want to grow and scale a business that works in harmony with your family and your life, this podcast is for you. This podcast is all about doing it on your own terms. And today I'm speaking to Laura Robinson from Worditude, who is most definitely carving her own path. Laura is a digital copywriter and conversion specialist with more than 10 years experience helping online businesses make more sales through their website, sales funnels, and launches. In this interview, Laura speaks candidly about how employment was just not an option and the decisions that she's had to make in order to build a business that works around home educating her 2 children. Welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on the Life Friendly Business Podcast.
You are so welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So tell us, what was your main driver for starting your own business?
Well, my story is not so much like bravery, courage, and a blaze of glory as I set up my own business. It was more like limping out of a corporate job in a shower of snot and tears. It was horrendous. The shortened version is our second son was born with additional medical needs, so he wasn't able to go into nursery or childcare placement, and he was in and out of hospital. We had what was called open ward access, which meant if your child gets ill, you don't bother with a GP, you go straight to the children's ward and bring a bag because you're going to stay there for a little while. And that wasn't very compatible with work anyway. My husband dropped down to part-time hours and I worked part-time hours so we could look after him between us and both still have a job. He got made redundant from that job and then he decided he wanted to go back to work full-time. Also trying to find part-time work when you're an accountant is quite difficult. So I didn't really have any choice. Like I couldn't carry on in the job that I was in. But alongside that, I'd had this horrendous 2 years where besides my baby being in and out of hospital, my maternal grandmother was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. She was only 73. So I know I was lucky to have a grandmother, but 73 didn't really feel like any kind of age. And at the same time, my mum was also diagnosed with breast cancer. So they were in hospital together. Obviously, my nan died. My mum made a full recovery and she's been 12 years clear. But it was like my entire support network completely collapsed around me. And then also needed my support at the time when I couldn't really give it because I was in and out of hospital with the baby. I was also ill myself. I had a burst appendix, I had pleurisy. It was just like 2 years of non-stop medical appointments and drama. And I was completely burnt out. I couldn't even work my notice at my job. I just literally walked out one day, didn't come back. And I took a whole year off, not working or trying to make any money at all. My babies they really were babies. They were 1 and 3 at the time. So we just really enjoyed going to mother and toddler groups and the lovely like routine of naps and lunch and dinner and just trying to have like a gentle normality when there was all this chaos going on around us. But I really had to find a way to make money because we couldn't survive just on one income. I remember having a conversation at mother and toddler group about money. I was really stressed about it because we didn't have enough every month just to pay our bills. And one of the mums, she was trying to help so much. And she said, you know, if you start shopping at Aldi, you could save like some money on your groceries. And like, how much money are you short every month? And just deadpan, I looked at her and went, about £600 a month. So that was I'm not going to save that off of my grocery bill. So I had quite a strong driver that I needed to find some way of making money. And, I didn't intend to have my own business at all. It was just circumstances. I couldn't go back to work. I had 2 very young children and I needed to find a way to make money. And so I spent hours on the internet looking. I must have fallen for every single type of luckily didn't pay any money out, so I didn't fall for scams to that extent, but I looked at every possible way. I even ended up like writing for, they were called content farms at the time, where you get paid about $2 to write a 500-word blog post that goes into like database, and then businesses come in and buy it. So it's so impersonal. You don't interact with the clients. But it did get me to start thinking, like I knew I could do that because I enjoyed writing, and that got me to start thinking I could do this more. And I don't like just writing it poor quality articles at high volume for clients that I never get to meet. So knowing that what I didn't enjoy about that did get me to start thinking about, okay, maybe this is something that I could do longer term, and is there a way I could make more money out of it? So the short answer is desperation is how I came to start my own business. It definitely wasn't pretty. There was no planning, and there definitely wasn't like any kind of intention of how it might look like in the end.
That is a lot to deal with, especially with 2 young kids and, all these extra strains on you. It's, I totally understand that. So you talk about starting to do writing for different companies. So what did you do previously? Were you a writer beforehand?
Yeah, in my previous work, I'd worked for a financial services company, and I'd always been in kind of marketing type roles. So I joined straight out of university, joined a graduate leadership program where they put you through a lot of personal development. It was intense. I'm sure they were thrilled that after having put me through all that personal development, I went, I'm pregnant, goodbye. After about 2 or 3 years. I was only 23 when I had my first child, so I'd only been in the job for a couple of years. But in that role, I got to move around a lot. That was the whole point. You moved every 6 months to a different department so that you could get an overview of the company. But I very quickly realized that actually the department I like working in was marketing. So I tried to make sure that all of my placements were kind of in and around that. So I'd worked in a communications type role in their customer service department, so managing the communications for the customer service department. And that was, I think there was about 1,500 people that worked just in that department of the company. Then in another role, I'd worked in marketing, and we'd been looking at user experience of websites. It was in the beginning when you were very first able to get your own insurance quote online. So we were at the cutting edge of that kind of development, looking at it was really interesting because we were looking at people had never done this before. So how do you communicate on a website? The instructions that they need to do, how they can successfully complete this, and then the letters that get sent to them after they've done it. Because everything we didn't just send an email. I had to send this massive document outlining their quotes. So I'd helped on the wording for that. And then I got into another communications role, which was a lot around company restructures. So it was taking what the leadership team would say in a meeting in their own special language and unique way of communicating with each other, and turning that into something that could be then used to communicate to the other 5,000 people that worked there. So I'd always been in some kind of role where how you use your words matters, and you needed to understand what is the goal, why are we writing this, why are we communicating this, and what's the best way to do it. And I really love that. I love that kind of facilitating communication.
So how old are your children now, and how does your business look today?
So my eldest is going to be 16 on this coming Sunday, which absolutely blows my mind, but he's like a fully formed adult now. And my youngest is 14. They have been out of school for the last 4 years now. I think we've home educated them for 4 years. So we started doing it before it was compulsory. And my business is mostly around helping other business owners to write their own website copy. So I really like to focus on website copy because you write it once and then it works for you over and over again. So it feels like the most efficient use of someone's time and energy is to get that copy right. So I have a course that helps people do that. And I also still work one-to-one with clients, helping them make their sales funnels as successful as possible. Sometimes website copy, but it's usually like a particular sales funnel to sell one particular product.
Wonderful. And so this podcast is all about building a life-friendly business. Would you say that that's something you've been able to design?
I think it is a dance. So it's not like I didn't like draw a picture of this is what it's going to be like. And then we get, and then it was there and it just carries on the same. I've had to keep changing it. So I had a business that worked while my children were in school. And then for various reasons, it became apparent that that was not the path that we were going to continue on, and we were going to have them at home. I keep saying we, but obviously my husband just carried on going to work. Like it had minimal impacts on his life. And so I needed to make changes to my business then so that it would adapt to what we wanted to do at home. And now they're getting older and we're reaching a different so home ed used to look like, to us, used to be a morning spent together, and then in the afternoon when their friends were home from school, they would just play video games, and then I'd be able to work in the afternoon. Now they have places that they have appointments that they go to. So my son goes to a tutor, the eldest one goes 3 times a week to a tutor, but they're on different times on different days. The younger one goes to this amazing occupational therapy farm. So he is a farm assistant, and he looks after the animals on the farm, and that's been amazing for his self-esteem and his confidence, but also like his physical development as well. But there are certain times that we have to take him there, and it's miles away from home. So that's a whole afternoon out of our day. And that's new. So I've had to change my business again to be able to fit that. And in a few years' time, they'll want something different, and I'll probably have to change my business again. So I think it's not something that I've built. It's something that I've got. It's like a fluidity to it that I have. And it's more so the confidence to change it, to go, okay, this worked for us right now, or worked for us up to this point, but it's not going to work for the next 2 years. So I need to make some changes to it now, and know that that will be satisfying for a while. And then I'll probably have to change it again a little bit further down the line.
I totally agree. I think that it is ever evolving when you're running a business anyway, and especially when you're adding kids into the mix. And my days of working on my business were completely different when my kids were younger. And now my kids are 8 and nearly 13. It is different because they're more independent, and I don't have to be watching to make sure they don't kill themselves when they're running around the house and things like that. So that gets easier. But then the emotional support and things like that you need to give them. So do you have an average day that you could describe to us?
No, I don't. So, and it also seems it would be disingenuous of me to not admit to this happening 2 days ago. So 2 days ago, because this is all about having a life-friendly business. And 2 days ago, I had a complete meltdown about I was just so overwhelmed by trying to do everything in one day. My husband's just started going back to work in the office 2 days a week, because obviously he's been home this whole time. Been amazing because he's there to do really small, could you just run to the tutors and go and pick Sam up? Can you just do just tiny little bits where you can help out? And you don't realize how much that's made a difference until there was a big yawning 11 hours and he wasn't there. And I'd had to change what I was doing in the day so many times, because they needed to be in certain places at certain times, but I also had appointments that were already booked in with clients. And so I'd had to switch gears in that particular day, mentally switch gears so many times from this task to that task, but also remember you've got to be here at this time. But by the time you got home from work, I just completely lost it. I was like, it's like my head has been in a blender. There's just so much gone on inside my head today. But I also felt like I had failed at every single one of those things, because it was 7 o'clock and I hadn't started the dinner. Then I think, well, that means dinner's not even going to be ready till 8 o'clock. So I'm stressed the whole time I'm cooking it, and I haven't replied to this other email. So no, there isn't one day that's the same. But actually that going through that of feeling so overwhelmed made me realize that the reason I feel so overwhelmed is because I don't have a single day that's the same. So in my old life, when the kids went to school, Monday through Friday looked kind of similar. We'd have to always get up at the same time every day. We'd have to be at the house at the same time every day. They would be back at the same time every day. And even when we first started home ed, there was a pattern, a rhythm to our week. And now every single day is different, because we need to be in different places at different times on different days. And then the weeks change, because even though we home ed, it does also depend on whether it's school holidays, because that impacts on the activities that they do, and whether my husband's going into the office, and whether it's a busy month end, so he's going to be tied up on calls. And I thought, no wonder I felt completely overwhelmed. And I'd just been coping with this for weeks and not really noticed that was what was going on. So no, I don't have a typical day. And I would say that is the hardest. That's the hardest. So on the outside, it looks like this amazing level of flexibility where Callum said, I'd like to have an extra day at the farm. And I could just go, yep, that's fine. I just book out my diary. I won't have any client calls for Fridays. That is what we do on Fridays now. And if the sun is shining, yep, I can just drop everything and we'll go to the beach. And there's massive advantages to it. But the disadvantage is that the level of planning and preparation that's needed to have that spontaneity is fairly intense. And it's pretty, it takes up a lot of headspace to be able to do it. Not sure if that answers your question.
Well, what you're talking about really is how vital the flexibility is in your life with all the different things that you're dealing with. And what I wondered about that is, have you had to make difficult decisions in terms of your business in order to keep that flexibility?
Yeah, I think so. I think a few times, different business coaches have suggested like an agency type model where I would have copywriters working for me, because I would have way more demand than capacity. And I know, and you get to like put your prices up, but there is a limit to that, to how much I'm prepared to charge to do it. But the demand always outstrips supply. And I think I could have a team of copywriters working for me, and we would work, and that would add value. Like we would work on it together, and that would make the copy even better. But I would really struggle to have other people be waiting for my feedback, waiting for me to having other calls booked in, because that's just another thing that's scheduled into my diary that I've got to be around for. So I've toyed with it for a couple of years, actually gone back and forward around the idea, and I can see that the potential's there and the potential to make money is there. And it would be, if I didn't have anyone else to think about, I think that would be quite an enjoyable way for me to work and to run my business. If I was a single woman with no children, it sounds amazing. But I have kind of closed that avenue off. So I think it makes, there's probably opportunities that I don't even see because I just automatically screen them out, because I think I know that that's not going to be compatible with my life.
How are you measuring your success?
For me, it is whether I can respond to the flexibility. So every time I can just drop everything and go to the beach, that is a win. There's not one big goal that I'm working towards. I also feel like being able to take the kids out of school, both of them really needed it. They were really not doing well in a school environment. Our youngest son has autism, and the mainstream school got him so far, but then we were going to have to start looking at sort of what the special needs provision was. Where we live, it's not great. And for me, having the flexibility to just say, we will choose first what is developmentally and emotionally and socially the best choice for them, is the first. That's the decision was based around that, and then I'll make everything else work around that. Being able to do that, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I was dependent on a job, was, to me, is like the biggest success I've had in this whole journey. And it felt like when I was doing my degree, I'm not designed to stick at things for a really long time, and so 3 years was a really long slog. And the way that I got myself through it was thinking, when you've done this, no, it never goes away. It's yours for, like, you've got it and it's yours forever. You don't have to keep it up to date. I mean, obviously I do by having professional development, but you've done it, it's yours, it's a keeper, you've got it forever. And that moment feels like that to me, that I've done it. I was able to make that decision for them, and that's a banker moment. I think I've achieved that, and it doesn't matter now what happens with my business, or even if I ever decide to go back to work, I was able to make that choice. So far that's been the biggest, big success. In terms of small successes, it's just, every time I can just drop everything and say, should we play a game of cards, or let's go to the beach. The other day I was so under it. I'd so far behind with emails, and 6 o'clock in the evening thinking, I'm so stressed out by how much I need to do. And the eldest one said, there was sun in the sky for the first time in so long, and it looked like it was going to be a nice evening. And he said, could we go for a walk? And my every instinct is like, no, we do not have time for this right now. I don't have time to go for a walk. And I just went, let's go. And we had a lovely walk along the beach. And it doesn't take very long either. It just takes 20 minutes, half an hour out the house. But being able to do that, because I can just drop everything, and it actually doesn't matter if at 9 o'clock I'm replying to emails. That's my business. I can arrange my time however I want. So it's one or two big wins, and then I try and grasp every single tiny success I can along the way and treasure it to keep me going.
And how do you have such a busy life with running the business and homeschooling and all those things? How do you look after yourself? I'm definitely getting better at that.
Right, when I don't even know which number lockdown it was, I think it was the second one. It had finished, and I enrolled we've got a spa not very far up the road, because I really love to swim, but the local swimming pool, first of all, is cold. Nobody wants to go in a cold swimming pool, but also they have timetables of when you can go. I know this is me justifying why I don't use the public swimming pool, which to an extent I don't need to do, but there's a timetable of when you're able to go. And then that was just another level of stress of how am I going to fit my work around when it's public swim time as well? So I enrolled at the spa, which was a bit of an extravagance. So I have a monthly membership there. Their pool's much smaller, but it's very warm, and it's almost always empty because everybody just lies around the pool reading a book, and then I just I get in and have it to myself, and I can go there whenever I want between the hours of 6 in the morning and 9 in the evening on weekdays. And that is how I look after myself now. I go, right, I've had enough. I'm getting in the pool. Nobody can talk to me in the pool. My phone can't come in the pool. It's amazing.
That's brilliant. And do you find that are you good at setting expectations with your clients? Like, you were talking about working flexibly and, deciding when you can't take calls. Like, how do you manage that with your clients?
Everyone has to book in before they speak to me anyway, so that my calendar is only available at times that are convenient to me. And then I don't need to, I'm not so flexible that I'll end up cancelling and moving the appointments around. So for the most part, they probably don't even see that side of my life. I'm not usually going to be around to answer emails in the morning because I tend to do my work later in the afternoon. The people that work with me long term know that. I don't take on very many new one-to-one clients now because I don't need to, and I don't have the space for it. So it's not really an issue. And then the group program that I run, I've really set that up around what's going to work for me as well. And I've hired another copywriter to help me with that. So she's on the calls with me. She helps do the feedback. So I've got backup as well. So if anything did happen and I wasn't available for the day or I couldn't make a call, I know that I've got someone there that can step in for me. But also we just make a great team. Like, the quality of what we can do together is so much better than I would be able to do on my own.
That leads into a great discussion about outsourcing and about creating that support around you as well, because as solo business owners, often we feel like we should be doing everything ourselves. So what kind of support do you have around yourself apart from that?
Oh my God, I have so much. And I was like exactly like that, going, I'm going to do everything myself and I will not pay for anything. I remember needing I think it was PicMonkey or something, but like a graphics platform. And there was a level that you could have for free. And if you would just pay like $20, it would unlock all these amazing things. I will not pay for anything. I can definitely make this work on my own on the free level. That was a long time ago now. And now I'm definitely way the other way, where I'll just pay for stuff to see if it's going to be useful. Like, I'm not going to use up the brain capacity to decide whether I really need this or not. I'm just going to try it, pay for it, try it, and then see what happens. In terms of having a team around me, I have the wonderful Amber, who's been with me for years now. She is a website designer, but she's also a graphic designer. So she's responsible for how good everything looks. So it's great. People say, your website looks lovely. I go, yeah, thanks. I can take that. Like, it's nothing to do with me. I've done nothing of this. Sometimes I go on Creative Market and I find like doodles that I like and I send them to her and go, I just bought all of these. Aren't they pretty? Do something with them. And she takes care of all of that side of things for me. I have Rachel, who's a copywriter, so she helps me with delivering the programs and giving feedback to people. And I have a social media manager at the moment, this is a revelation to me, that I can send her something and go, do you think people would want to read this? What do I do with this? And she takes care of scheduling it and making sure it's got the right hashtags and showing me. I'm really underselling what she does here. I feel really guilty now. Faye does a lot more than that, but because I understand so little of that world, it's very hard for me to express what it is that she's doing. But that's been a huge help, because I would ideally never look at social media ever, and that's not really compatible with running a business. So it's nice having someone encourage me to do it in a really targeted way, in a way that's going to make a difference, and in a way that I feel comfortable to do.
And have you ever had a mentor or a coach?
Oh God. I didn't mention my coach. She's going to be sending me daggers. Dagger looks over the internet. I also work, with a coach, Nicole. She is a mindset mastery coach. So it's more than just business, which is what I love about working with her. So every month we work together every month, and I can choose what is the thing that we need to focus on. And it doesn't have to be anything to do with work. So this last month, like I say, actually this has come up at home, and I know that is like, I can feel the energy that it's sucking out of me and how much headspace it's taking up. So that's the thing we're going to focus on. And she completely understands how your experience of success of life, your fulfillment, is a holistic thing. It's not just on what you do inside your business, which I love. That's really been very compatible with me.
I totally remember when I was working with my coach, who I worked with for a couple of years, when we were first talking about it. She does online business consulting, but she also does a lot of mindset stuff. And I remember saying, I don't really need the mindset stuff. It's just the online business stuff that I need. And of course, I was completely wrong, because every single session ends up with some kind of mindset block that you've got around selling, around, taking action. So yeah, it is absolutely a kind of all-rounded approach that we need to take with this, isn't it?
Definitely. And I found, so how things show up for me when there's like a bad, I say it's not even hidden. Like, obviously most people can see this block in broad daylight. It's just that I haven't noticed it. Things come up in threes for me, events that are kind of similar, but that some of those might happen in my business and some of it might be something that happened at the supermarket. So I need someone who has that kind of overview that's helping me join all the dots together and go, oh, that's the same issue. Like, it showed up in my car, in the supermarket, and in my email this week, but that's the same problem. And then we can tackle it, from a more holistic perspective.
And that's what is so valuable, isn't it, about having a mentor or a coach, is that they can hold her up and you have to face those issues. So what advice would you give to people listening who really love the idea of creating a more life-friendly business, but feel like they're kind of stuck in just the overwhelm of day to day?
That's a really good question. This feels a bit morose to say it this way, but if you were in a position that I was in, where you have literally got no choice but to make it work, or something happened that meant that you were unable to work a certain number of hours a day, or you were required to care for someone, you would make it work, because you'd have no choice. But what happens is, when we've got like more time available than we actually need, the task expands to fill this gap. So my best example of that is when my kids went to school, I would sit down at my desk at like 9 o'clock. I'd drop them off and I'd start work, and I would be there for 6 hours until it was time to pick them up. And I didn't really feel like I was achieving amazing things. And then I took them out of school, and the amount of time I had available to work halved, like literally halved overnight. And I made my business more successful. I made more money because I had to make at least the same amount of money. And that made me take a step back. Okay, this is the hours I've got available. How am I going to make this work? What can I do? So it made me strategize. It made me create a plan when before I didn't have one, and I made it work. And then things have changed again since then. And I've had to do the same thing, take a step back. Okay, this model's not going to work anymore. What are we going to do? How can we? And I'm already recovering the income and working towards making more money. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I think there's probably a chance that it's just like a gas that's expanded to fill the space that you've got available. And if you were to be a bit more strict with yourself about how much time you're prepared to spend on it, and chunk that time down of like, actually, I'm only going to give this decision this afternoon. I've got to make this decision and take action. I'm going to do it this afternoon. The end. Then I draw a line under it and get on with whatever the next thing is. You can get some momentum going like that. But when you've got so much to do and so much time to do it in, it's just kind of like a stagnant pool. It doesn't go anywhere. It's really hard to kind of get any movement going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've talked about James Wedmore and his thing about the 5%. You need to focus on the 5%, and we can spend hours and hours stuck in the 95% that doesn't really move the needle on our business, but we can be so much more productive. And like you say, even if you've got 1 hour a day, if you're focusing on the 5%, you're actually going to see the impact in your business.
You have to just come to terms with being a bit rubbish at some things as well. Like I'm not going to be able to reply to every email. It's literally impossible for me to do that with the amount that is in my life. So for me to be able to do everything that I do and to fit everything in, some stuff gets done really badly. Like sometimes the house absolutely looks horrific. Sometimes the kids look at me and go, but we haven't got any pants left. I'm like, yep, that's because the laundry basket is very, very full right now because I got too involved in what I was doing today. And so I've definitely had to come to terms with not being good at everything all the time. And I just try and share it around a bit. So the thing that's neglected isn't always the same thing. It just sort of takes it in turns. Like, oh, it's not your turn this week. I'm just going to ignore this thing. And then next week, I promise I'll make up on it.
That's brilliant. So I've got two last questions for you. One is, what's next for you?
What's next? I have only just started to transition towards running this Write Your Website program. So that's feels like that's now, but it's also next, because it's relatively new. I'm running it for the third time right now. And my plan is to run it 2 or 3 times a year, because I can really see the value in picking one thing, doing it really well, doing it over and over again, so that you can make it better every time. So I think for the next phase of my business is about doing things that are repeatable and refinable. Don't even know if that's a word, but so that I can keep making it better. I've got a couple of other courses that support that and really complement it. And that's what I want to focus on, is the delivery of those, the ongoing development of them, marketing just this one thing, and just seeing what happens when I do that. So like, it's also, for me, there's always an element of curiosity and fun to just go, well, let's try this and see what happens. And
where can people find out more about that?
If you go to my website, which is worditude.co.uk, or on Facebook, just put Worditude. It's a made-up word, so
I love that. Worditude. And so if you could travel back in time and speak to Laura way back then, when you were basically forced into a position where you had to make something work and you had to start a business, what would you tell her?
I would definitely make her have timetabled time that was for reflection and planning and that inner work, rather than just frantically doing. Like, if I think for how many hours I spent on the internet, so like, how many versions of make money online can you Google anyway? There was no way I needed to spend that many hours doing it. Probably a 2-hour search would have got me started on my journey. But there was just so much attachment to doing and feeling like I had, because we didn't have enough money. It felt like if I wasn't working towards that all the time, then I was like slacking. I was letting the side down, letting the family down. But actually, if I just calmed it down a little bit and thought, I'm going to spend this much time of my day doing, researching, working towards building this business, but I'm going to spend a huge chunk of time reflecting on how I would want that to look. You know, what kind of work do I enjoy? But I didn't even know that was possible. Like, it seems, when you've worked for someone else for so long and then you first come into this online world, it seems crazy. Like, I remember that my mum just going like, but how do people give you the money? Like, how does the money get to you? That was how alien this concept was. So I had absolutely no idea what was possible, but I would definitely tell myself now, take some time out to explore what's possible before throwing yourself into trying to get it done.
And that's about stepping into the role of the CEO of your business, isn't it? It's taking that broader picture view, and you can't do that when you're deep in the weeds. You have to give yourself time to reflect.
Yeah, but it's a huge change in the way that we're raised, the way that our culture is, that you from 4 years old go somewhere 5 days a week for a certain number of hours, and then you get a job and you do the same thing. And I remember being really young. I remember at university, they talked about, this is how old I am. At university, they talked about this thing that was going to be called virtual working. And sometimes people would be able to work from home and still have a job. And then there was going to be this micro economy of solo, but they obviously didn't call them solopreneurs, but self-employed individuals who ran their businesses. And I remember every fiber of my being screaming like, yes, that is for me. I do not want to have to be paid to sit in somebody else's office for 5 days a week for the rest of my life. But that's how we're programmed, is to do that. So if we take ourselves out of that environment and become kind of jobless, it's really hard to embrace that freedom that you've got and all of the time, and how you've got control over your week. Because if you've never had to plan a week like that before, it's very disorientating. It's hard to know how to use that time wisely. So I think it's natural that we then just go, right, okay, I'm going to replace my job with some activities that I can do for 6 or 7 hours a day for 5 days a week and only take weekends off.
Yeah, it's absolutely about thinking outside the box, isn't it? And carving your own path, which is something we talk about a lot on this podcast, and doing it on your own terms and not feeling like you have to fit into that box that we're brought up to believe. Yeah.
And you're going to upset a few people when you do it. Like, I've definitely lost some friends along the way who have gone like, no, that life's too weird. I can't be hanging around with you.
And that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that do get it. You know, that's why these communities of small business owners are just so valuable.
Oh, definitely. And you can see what's possible when you're in a community like that. You can see other people who are further ahead than you, or other people whose lives just look completely different from your own. And that gives you ideas and inspiration that you just can't get. You can't get that from mainstream media, and you can't get that usually from your real life friends, because you're restricted by location and who you see and who you happen to know. You're only going to see a range of opportunities. Once you get into these online communities, it's like this whole other world of what's possible.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Laura.
You're very welcome.
You've been listening to the Life Friendly Business podcast, which is all about carving your own path and doing it at your own pace. But I know that's not easy to do. So to help you decide what a life-friendly business looks like for you and help you to stick to the boundaries and commitments needed to create that, I've created the Life Friendly Business Prescription. Download this free workbook and spend 30 to 60 minutes reflecting on what life-friendly means to you and the changes you may need to make in order to achieve the work-life balance you desire. Once you've made these decisions, you can add them to your own printable life-friendly business prescription that you can put on your wall to remind yourself that you have the power to design your very own life-friendly business. Download yours now at lifefriendlybusiness.com/prescription.